All right. Well, welcome everybody. This is our very first Training with Purpose. And today we have a special guest, Lacey Menasco, who's going to be sharing her experience as a training. She's had some amazing improvements in such a short period of time. I've known her for quite a while. She's been with Team Blaze for 4 years. I think we've known each other probably for the last year or so. And I was just impressed with the time that you told me you were trying to qualify for Boston, and then you qualified for the Boston Marathon. And shortly after that, you told me about St. George, and you qualified for the championships for the 70.3 triathlon, and just amazing improvements. And you've only done 2 marathons. And so it was in your second marathon that you qualified. Is that true?
Yeah,
No.
that's right. I've only done two. Um, and it just worked out, I guess, the second time. I trained very specifically for that race. So
Cool. Well, just share with us, tell us a little bit about your training. Just, I think that people are going to find it very valuable, your training techniques, your mental strategies, and your diet. But let's just start with the training and give us a little history of your training.
okay, so a little bit of background on me. I was not an athlete as a young person or even into my early adult years. It wasn't until probably like my mid 30s I started running a little bit and doing like Jillian Michaels workout videos at home because I had young kids, worked full time, and really that's what I could figure out how to work into my life. And then I just fell in love with running and being outside and trail running and had a great time kind of learning what my body could do, that I could do this stuff that I thought was so hard that was only for like these really elite people. So then I bought a bike and that was really fun because you could go so far on the bike and ride a long ways. And I really enjoyed that. And then I thought I'll do a triathlon just for fun, like just check one off the list. And that was in 2018. Did a couple sprints that year. Thought those crazy Ironman people are just wild. I could never do that. Then I signed up for a half Ironman in 2019 and did Coeur d'Alene. Um, and then in 21 did a well in 20 early 2020, right before the pandemic, I did my first marathon. That was the Maui Oceanfront Marathon, which I couldn't recommend enough. It's gorgeous, and you run along the coast of Maui. It's a point-to-point race, beautiful. Did that in 4 hours and 37 minutes. Again, thought I could never run a marathon, so just the idea of even completing it was a huge victory for me. Like even if I walked the last half, I didn't even care because I'm not a marathon runner. I didn't think I could ever do that. And then I did a full Ironman. And I think through the course of that, learned that I'm capable of more than I thought. I guess I learned that through the whole Ironman or whole triathlon process. All of it was really hard. All of it was really scary. The first time going to the gym and getting in the pool, with a swim cap and goggles at 37 years old, it was all really intimidating and really hard. But I just kept doing, this hard stuff that I thought was impossible over and over and over again. And then it got kind of fast. And then it was a whole new world of being able to actually compete at races versus going out and trying to check off a bucket list item, hoping to finish in one piece. I learned that I could, be fast and do hard things. And, at 40 years old, I ran my second marathon, an hour and 10 minutes faster than my first one. And that's where I qualified for Boston.
Wow. So yeah, and we were talking earlier that's an hour of shaving off your time. How did you do that? And what do you contribute the most to such incredible amount of time of improvement? Because when I talk to other athletes, it's very rare for somebody to say, "Oh, I shaved an hour off my time," or, and in your case, a little bit over an hour.
I think there's a few things. My first race, I probably didn't train enough for. So maybe I was a little undertrained for that one because I just had really low expectations of myself. I thought I just was going to try to finish it. And so I didn't push that hard in the training. I kind of hit my miles and just thought I'm going to go and, check it off a list, say I'm a marathoner. And so that was probably part of that first time was probably a little slow. I think triathlon training gives you so much endurance. I train a lot. I work out 7 or 8 times a week, probably by the time I work in bikes and swims and runs and strength training. And so I think I have a lot of endurance, not just from running, but from these other sports that give me endurance without really beating up my body as much as running does.
Yeah.
And plus I strength train a lot. And so I think I have really strong legs. I run a lot of hills. I don't shy away from hard things like that. I love trail running. It's not uncommon for me to have 1,000 feet of elevation in a 6 or 7 mile run if I go and hit the trails. And that definitely translates to speed on flat ground. And so I think that's a big part of it. And then for the race where I qualified for Boston, I picked a plan that was really specific to the speed I wanted to run. I knew I needed a 3 hour and 40-minute marathon. And my girlfriend I was training with is a little younger than me. She needed a 3:35, and we knew we needed cushion, so we trained for a 3:30. So everything that we did had a 8-minute marathon pace for all of it. And then we backed it out because our plan was very specific with speed work. So that meant our half marathon pace for our training runs would be a 7:40, 10K pace is a 7:20. And we would always, if I programmed it in my watch, I would go lower than that. So it was a 10K interval. I said it needed to be between a 7 and a 7:20, and so we had this really structured plan that's from the Boston Marathon website on how to train for the Boston Marathon, even though we were training for another race. But we just followed it and we hit every interval. If it said, we're doing 3/4 of a mile at your 10K pace and a 1/4 mile recovery 5 times in the middle of your run with your warm up and cool down, that's what we did.
Oh,
And
nice.
so we stuck right to it, and I would say we nailed every workout. My girlfriend ran all of them. Since I'm a triathlete, I dropped a couple runs because I was adding 2 swims, 2 or 3 bikes. So I figured that was okay to run a little less. So,
It worked for you. And how about track workout? Did you guys do track workout, or would you do the speed work on the street?
it depends. I love track workouts. Um, Again, we're both working moms. And so often when we're running is early and in the dark, sometimes in the winter, and so if we could get to a track, we would do it at a track. If it was school hours or hard to meet somewhere to get on a track, we would just do it like on the Centennial Trail running, through downtown Spokane or on a street and just have it programmed in our watch.
Oh, nice.
Yeah. So I
Yeah.
lived and died by this Garmin. I learned how to program workouts into the Garmin Connect app, upload them to my watch, and you just listen for your beeps that tells you your intervals and your paces. It was a game changer.
Nice. Oh, yeah, that seems like a handy tool. And it's
Yeah.
which Garmin is that? And is it the same one you were using when you were training?
Yeah. So I have a Phoenix 6, but a lot of the Garmins I think allow you to program workouts into them. And I
Awesome.
tell people all the time, if you're going to do intervals, you need to program it because it's so nice instead of running and like you have to check your time or your distance to know when to change your pace. It'll tell you when you put your limits, your upper and lower limits for that interval, and it'll give you different beeps if you're going too fast or too slow. I also use it to tell me when to eat.
Oh, wow.
So,
We use it for your diet as well.
well, for fueling during a run.
Oh, okay.
Not
Yeah,
during the day.
I've heard of
It
it.
has a pop-up that says eat during
Yeah,
my yeah.
I've heard about that. I heard also some people do it for drinking water, so they don't forget to keep drinking water.
Yeah, yeah.
Cool, cool. And so track workouts, speed some of it on the streets. You're doing a lot of cross training with the trainee, both when you're doing the because you're doing the training for the triathlon as you were getting ready for qualifying for Boston.
Yeah, so the marathon where I qualified for Boston, I'm sorry, my dog is growling. Neighbors. Was so that marathon was in June, and 4 weeks later I had a half Ironman, and that's the race where I qualified for the World Championships. So I was doing both, but really Boston at that time, qualifying for Boston was my priority. And so typically triathletes might have a big bike workout on their Saturday and a long run after, and you're doing your long run on tired legs, and you just know it's going to be a rough run. Where I would kind of flip flop those and make sure I got my long run in on Saturday. And then my bikes all kind of suffered a little bit. Like I was biking on tired legs a lot, but I knew biking is my strength. So I wasn't too worried about that. But those long runs, I really wanted to hit the paces I needed to hit. And I mentioned this a little bit earlier that our plan was very specific that we followed. So we did have some long runs that were the long, slow runs. You always hear about those with marathon training and how important the long, slow run is. And we had some of those, but even our long runs had a lot of marathon pace typically built in.
Okay.
And so I really wanted to feel confident in those marathon pace miles before I went to the qualifying race. And so I didn't want to, and part of that's my mental strategy. I wanted to go into the race super confident, knowing I was gonna like hit my paces I wanted to hit. And so I wanted to hit those on the training run. So there was a couple times we did a couple mile warm up and then 10 miles at our marathon pace, that 8-minute mile, which is hard. But if I'm going to go do it for 26 miles, I better be able to do it for 10, And so those are hard runs to lock in that marathon pace for 10 miles at the end of a long training week too. So you're going into it with fatigued legs, but I wanted to mentally know that I could do it.
So 10 miles at marathon pace was like in the middle of your long run, the marathon pace, the 10 miles.
Yep. So that we did that run a few different times, probably like at week 12 and at week 16 or something out of our 20-week plan. We had some runs like that. We would lock in marathon pace for a long time. And even the 18 or 20 miler that we did, it had a couple mile warm up, maybe 3 miles marathon pace, 2 miles easy, repeated 3 times, then a cool down or something like that. So we had quite a few marathon pace miles, even in our long, long runs.
I'm curious, how did you come across the training plan?
It's on the Boston website, Boston Marathon website.
Uh,
So it was, kind of my girlfriend and I who were going to train for it. We decided to try it together. And so we're like, we found a couple different plans that were targeting a certain pace. Like if we wanted a 3:30 marathon, here's a couple different plans that do that. And this one just looked so interesting because all the runs were different. Every week, the runs are different. And there's so many intervals built in. We loved it. Like it was so much fun and we never got bored. I would recommend it to anybody.
And what was the longest run that plan had?
I think it was 18 to 20. So a lot of times it did have a variable, like a 2 to 3 mile warm up and a 2 to 3 mile cool down, and it would kind of give you a range like that. So you could flex it a little bit.
Nice. Yeah, and because I used when I was training for the Boston Marathon, it was the run less, run faster.
Oh, interesting.
But it's very similar to what you're talking about. There wasn't much, I don't think he had passed 20 miles for training, but it was aggressive. It was like the marathon pace where I've compared it to the runner's world and other marathon advice is running usually 1 minute slower than marathon pace. And very few recommend, but that one did. That one's like, you got to run marathon pace, pretty close to marathon pace.
Yeah.
And the speed workouts were like much faster than your marathon pace.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's how this one was. Like we would have a lot of 10K pace intervals, which for us was a 7 to 7:20. And we're shooting for that 8-minute mile for the marathon. One of my favorite runs I thought was really interesting. It had us do half marathon pace, maybe for 3 minutes, marathon pace for 2 minutes, repeated like maybe 8 times in the middle of a run. It was so cool because you're running hard and then you ease back into your marathon pace. Even though an 8-minute mile is still fast for me, it was a little easier than that 7:30, 7:40. And we kind of fluctuated between there, but it mentally makes you feel like your marathon pace is your recovery, right? You're like easing back into it. So it makes your marathon pace feel easy compared to your half marathon pace.
Yeah.
And I thought that was so interesting. I'm like, this is genius. Like to make me feel like my marathon pace is my recovery pace when really it's really fast. So
Yeah, I remember the feeling when your legs start to feel fast and then they're asking you to go much slower than that. And okay, then it feels like you can go forever.
yeah, yeah.
That's pretty cool. Now, as far as I know, you and I talked about in the past of the Yasso 800s. And then at that time you said you have heard of them before. Did you try them on your?
We did. So there's three of us that did, well, three of us did the Yassos. There's a few of us that went and ran that marathon, four actually. But and they were almost right on. So the Yasso, if I explain this right, is you do 10 800s with a rest in the middle. So we did an 800 hard, and then we did an easy jog 400. And then we did the 800 again. So it ends up being with a warm up and cool down about a 10-mile run. But is it 5 of those? Because 10 800s would be 5 miles. Yeah. So 5 of those are hard.
Yeah.
And your Yasso time for that the average time for your 800, like I averaged right at a 3:30. That's what I was shooting for. And I didn't know if I could hang on the whole time. And a couple were a couple seconds faster.
3 minutes and 30 seconds, just for
Yes.
clarification. Okay.
Yes, correct. So yeah, for that 800, so 2 laps around the track, I averaged for all 10 of those 3 minutes and 30 seconds. And that was my goal time for the marathon. And I did a 3:27 marathon. And my friend Carolyn, who also qualified and did that same Yasso track workout the same day, she was, I think, at 3:29 for her Yassos, and she ran a 3:25 marathon.
Okay.
So it was on. Yeah.
For clarification for our audience, the Yasso 800s usually translate. Somebody figured out that if you can run 800, it's usually half a mile. So if you can run it in minutes, for example, if it's 4 minutes, then that will translate into a 4-hour marathon. But you got to be able to do 10 of them with a 400 interval of recovery. In her case, it was 3 minutes, 3 minutes and 30-second 800s.
Yeah.
And that translated into a 3-hour, 27-minute marathon. So it's pretty accurate. The best indicator of your pace, I usually tell everyone, is the half marathon. And the formula for the half marathon is usually your time, double your time plus add 10 minutes.
Yeah. And I ran the Jackass half marathon, and it's a slightly downhill race. Most of it's about a 1% downhill grade. It has a hill in the middle and a hill at the end. And I ran that in 1:39. And that was kind of the race that made me think, oh, I could probably qualify for Boston. Because an hour and 39, if you double that and add 10, is right around that 3:30. Is that right? It was close.
Well, 139, you said? Yeah. Yep.
Yeah. So that was the one that made me think, oh, I never even dreamed of even trying. I never even wanted to try because I thought it was so far out there to ever qualify for Boston. It never crossed my mind until after that race, and someone pointed out to me that pace translated to like a BQ time. I'm like, oh.
Awesome. And that's something I tell even with with all the goals, that once you see something possible, the possibility, it's such a motivator. Like, and for me, I've shared this with Morris before. It was somebody saying, oh, you would be considered an elite runner if you qualify for Boston. And I was like, really? Okay, then I'm gonna go ahead and go for it. But yeah, and you seem to have the same experience. Somebody said, wow, you can qualify for Boston with that half marathon time.
Yeah,
And the other thing that you and I talked about is cadence, which this is one of the first questions I ask my athletes is, do you know what your cadence is? And I'm surprised how many athletes do not know what their cadence is, or they're not paying attention to their cadence. So how about you? What's your cadence, and how much attention do you pay to your cadence?
Yeah, so this is probably something that did contribute to my increase in speed in like 2021. I read a book called Running Pain Free, or You Can Run Pain Free. I should have looked up the exact name before I got on this. But it talks a lot about cadence and really how cadence can fix most of our form problems we're going to have when we're running, whether we're heel striking or different things. If you speed up your cadence, so many other things come into alignment. You're not going to overreach. You're not going to do different things wrong. And my running form improved a lot. I used to have a lot of knee pain, and that's one reason I thought I'll never be a marathon runner, because I can't run that much because my knees hurt. Well, I improved my form mostly by improving my cadence. And I run so much faster with so much less work with a better cadence and better form. And so my cadence on almost any run, no matter my pace, is 180 to 185 now.
Okay.
And it was a lot slower before. And I made a playlist on Spotify of songs that are 180 BPM. You can search those. They have playlists already made, and I would listen to it, and I found the ones I liked and made my own, and then I put other songs in there too. But I ran to that playlist for a long time. And now for the last year or two, I run mostly with friends. So I'm not listening to music, but that's my natural cadence now. I always run 180 to 185 no matter what.
Nice. Yeah, and that's sounds very efficient for you.
Yeah, I'm short, so that helps too. I think I have short legs. I think if you're a little taller, maybe that does make sense. Some people would have a little slower cadence. I always hear 180 is that magic number, but maybe not for everybody. But it definitely has worked for me.
I noticed that too, because when I was increasing my cadence, it felt funny, because I feel like I was looking at women triathletes, because I saw one triathlete when she was coming out of the bike, the announcer said, "Oh, and she has like 120 cadence, and she runs a sub 3 hour marathon." And I'm looking at her, and it doesn't look it, because it looks like she's walking like this, and because that's very rapid. You're just moving your hips so fast. So I tried it, like, okay, I'm just gonna mimic her, but it made me look really funny. It's like the high cadence just felt for a while really funny. And so now what I usually tell people is to increase it very gradual, so that, because you can cause some injuries if you try to go drastic, like from, let's say somebody who's doing 160 and all of a sudden wants to do 180. It can be problematic to increase it so fast.
Yeah. And one thing, my running partner that I'm qualified for Boston with, she has about a 190 cadence, and I started running with her around that same time, and it helped me speed up. I'm still not as high as her, and hers works for her, and she's always right there, and I'm always right where I am. But that helped me running with somebody to like settle in to pace with them, someone else with a fast cadence. And I still use that. I can tell when my form starts falling apart. Maybe I'm getting tired at the end of a run. I can feel I get kind of floppy, like sloppier with all my movements. And I have to think, it's one of my mantras I tell myself is quick cadence, easy effort. And I try to stand up a little taller and lean forward just a little bit and keep my quick cadence quick, easy effort, like just chill, but keep that form good and keep that cadence up. And then my pace, normally I just speed right up as soon as I stand up and lean forward a little, and then keep my cadence up. My pace goes up, and I can still settle my heart rate and settle down. But that's something I tell myself all the time: quick cadence, easy effort. Like,
But that's genius, especially when you hit the uphills where your energy goes down and you're finding that you're doing more effort. I think those mantras like you have right there, they're perfect for those times. Because do you feel like it's another gear, like you're switching a gear, you're going uphill, and the tendency is to drag your feet, and then your cadence goes down and you're actually pushing harder, especially with a posture. So I feel anyway that when you do the rapid cadence, it's like when you're on the bike and you have to switch to a lower gear, it looks like you're just pedaling, but you're not pushing a high gear and a lot of muscle.
Yeah, it's just there's an efficiency difference, I
Yeah.
feel like. They just get that turned over a little quicker, and whether you're getting up a hill or just kind of resetting. Like I said, I can feel myself when I get tired, getting kind of floppy, or maybe even heel striking and everything just kind of hurts. And I'm like, nope, like let's fix it. And I feel so much better.
All right. Well, I love that mantra then because you're telling us a little bit of that mental strategies. Can you tell us just a few more mantras you might have or other mental strategies that get you through a hard training day or, disappointments like injuries and things of that nature?
Yeah. And I guess it's different on each race. I feel like has been really different for me on where my mind goes to get me through it. I really like to focus on positivity and just thankfulness. My first Ironman I did was a hot, horrible day. It was 105 and people are dropping like flies. um, but I really focused on like being thankful that I could be here. Like I'm thankful my body allows me to do this. I'm thankful to be healthy enough to be out here with all these amazing people in this beautiful place doing something that's so hard and so impossible for a lot of people. Um, and so that's always something that helps me. Um, my TV is making noise. I'm not sure why.
Oh,
I'm sorry. Hang on just one second. I'm sorry about that. My dog laid on a controller. I'm like, there's something happening. Um, so that's helped me on race day. During the marathon, the tunnel marathon where I qualified for Boston, and this is something that had never happened to me before. Because for the most part, I'm very confident. Even going into the Ironman when it was 105 degrees, and like I had people telling me I shouldn't even go do it. Like, this is dangerous. Are you still gonna do it? You're crazy. And I'm like, yeah, and I'm gonna finish. Like, it never crossed my mind that I wouldn't finish that day. And even with the race where we were qualifying for Boston, I'd hit every workout. I went into it 100% confident that I was going to qualify. I don't know exactly why I was so confident, but I was. And I do think that's a big part of why I'm successful at these races. Like, I'm going to go and nail it. I had a half marathon earlier this year. I was going to PR it. And I went out and PR'd it by 2.5 minutes. And that was my plan. I ran the pace I planned to run, and it was fine. And so I have a pretty good mental game to just be able to choose that. But so at the tunnel marathon, probably like mile 16, because it is hard it's a slight downhill for 2% grade pretty much the whole race. And it starts wearing out your legs different. And I did practice downhill running, but it still hurts. You can practice it and it's still going to hurt. And so mile 16, my quads were hurting, and mile 18 started hurt more. And I got like this fear. I was afraid of the wall. Everyone talks about the wall you hit at mile 20. And I'm like, oh no, the wall is going to take me out. And I've never felt doubt in a race before. And I've definitely never felt like fear. It was so weird. And it kept getting this feeling. And then I just got like angry. I'm like, there is no effing wall. I just got like fired up. I'm just like dropping F bombs as I'm running down the mountain. I'm like, there is no effing wall. The wall's not going to, not today, wall. And I just got like fired up and I ran so hard. I still slowed down towards the end because I went too fast at the beginning, because I do it every race. And I just know that it's going to happen. I'm really bad at pacing. I can work on improving that. But yeah, I just got like really determined that the wall wasn't going to get me, and I just got angry. So that was my mantra that day.
Right through that wall.
But to get myself through most days, I'm really thankful. Like all the training, right? We train for hundreds of hours to go out and race for, 3-hour marathon or a 5-hour half Ironman or something like that, right? We put in hundreds of hours. And that's where I think the real mental toughness is in all of the training. And I hear people say how motivation comes and goes. You can't plan to be motivated. You have to be dedicated. And so you just choose. Like, there's never a morning my alarm goes off and I like decide Like, do I feel like working out today? Like, I've chosen, I'm going to do the training plan. I am going to work out. Like, it never is an option to me to turn off my alarm and not go run. And so that's just something I've decided. I decided that at the beginning of the 20-week plan. Like, this is my workout. This is what I'm going to do. One thing that does help with that is that I have people I train with. And so, if I'm meeting girlfriends to run downtown at 5 a.m. in the dark in the winter, I can't bail on them, because if she can't go run downtown in the dark, downtown Spokane by herself, that's not safe. That would be horrible of me to cancel on her. So that gets me there, right? Like, going with friends, I'm dedicated to her and to me. And so I'm going to show up for them. And so that's been a big part. And it makes them so fun. It's my girlfriend time. So like, I've ran hundreds of miles with my friends, and that really does make the time go by a lot faster.
Yeah, me too. The joining Team Blaze was huge for me, and that's when I started doing triathlons. That's when my running improved. Yeah, and I agree with you. And Morris and I have talked about almost anything that we set out to do. If you have more people, more networking that are trying to accomplish the same thing, you have people who you help and they help you, your chances of succeeding goes way up high.
It does. We learn so much from each other.
Yes.
My girlfriends I run with, they probably do more reading or podcast listening than I do. And so they'll come to the run, you know what I read about, or listen to this podcast about nutrition or about fueling or about recovery. And one is really good at foam rolling and different things. I'm like, oh yes, I do need to foam roll or stretch, or, we all learn from each other and encourage each other. So
Awesome. Good, good. Well, good segue, since you mentioned nutrition, is we can go right into diet. And this is one of the things that I said we were going to talk about, what your diet is in the training, and just what your thoughts and beliefs and the discipline of following a particular diet.
yeah, I would say nutrition is probably the most individualized part of, triathlon or running. Is everyone's body is going to respond differently, and probably most people need a little different nutrition, especially between men and women. So I read a book called Roar. It's by Dr. Stacy Sims, and read that quite a few years ago, and have really kind of followed a lot of her principles on fueling. So I eat a lot of carbs. Carbs are good. I try to eat a lot of protein, eat my body weight in grams of protein every day if I'm paying attention. I believe in fueling before my workouts. A lot of people fuel fasted. I try to eat every morning before I work out, carbs and protein before a workout, protein right after. I kind of joke, I start really good in my day. Like, I might have overnight oats with protein powder and chia seeds and get all this good protein, finish my workout, have my protein shake, maybe later in the morning. I work from home, so I get to have a third breakfast. If I want a third breakfast, I'll have scrambled eggs in the middle of the morning with like cottage cheese and salsa or something. And then it normally falls apart after that. Like, I will have chips and salsa for lunch and then eat whatever is convenient for dinner. But I do try to eat healthy. And I do think for women specifically, there is science that shows that we perform better fueled. And probably men too. But I know my body responds so much better when I'm fully fueled. So when I eat breakfast, and even with marathon training, I remember when a half marathon was a big deal, right? And I might carbo load for a half marathon. This marathon training plan had me running more than a half marathon for like 14 or 15 weekends in a row. And so like every Friday night, I had to think, how am I fueling for my Saturday morning long run? And I can feel a difference. I had shared with you previously how I've lost a significant amount of weight. This is probably almost 20 years ago now, 15, 20 years ago. And so I did kind of get this mindset that carbs are bad. So I eat a lot of like steak and salad would be a great dinner, something I would eat a lot, steak and asparagus for dinner off the grill. So I eat a lot of meat and veggie dinners, and that's just normal. And sometimes I would do that and go out for a long run the next day, and I can feel it. Like, my body doesn't have energy. Like, I needed to add a baked potato to that dinner. I should have added some quinoa. And so when I do that and make sure I get a good carb the night before and fuel in the morning, my body performs so much better. And I think as athletes, we're asking a lot from our body, and we need to give it the fuel it needs to do that.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And the fact that you've made it a lifestyle, because I'm working on doing a video. My next video is on weight loss, running for weight loss.
Mm.
And part of the findings on that is that diets, from what I've researched, have a 90% failure rate in the long term. And you've been able to keep your weight consistent for the last, what you said, 20 years?
Almost, yeah. It's been a while.
Yeah.
I think my body composition has changed. So, I lost quite a bit of weight, yeah, almost 20 years ago, maybe 17, 18 years ago. But then I didn't start like lifting weights and really strength training until more like 8 to 10 years ago. And so my weight hasn't changed much. Best thing I ever did was break up with the scale. I don't really know what I weigh myself maybe once or twice a year for maybe the last 3 or 4 years. Like it's not a daily thing anymore. It was for decades, right? Every morning, first thing, you stand on the scale and it can make or break your day if it goes up a little or down a little. But I just stopped doing that. And so I'm an athlete and I fuel and I train. I don't diet and exercise. Like I set big non-scale goals, whether I'm going to PR my 5K or run my first half marathon or whatever it is. And I'm going to fuel my body so I can go and do that.
That's amazing. There's a big movement with the weight loss or trying to maintain weight, because the other thing is that now it seems that that is the exception. Being fit and lean is the exception, but now society, the norm is being overweight and out of shape. So with that in mind, some of the recommendations have been to stick to whole foods, less processed food, more of the less processed. What's your take on the whole foods? Do you practice that? Do you try to do, well, what I've heard, like you mentioned steaks, you mentioned vegetables, baked potato, they're still all whole foods.
Yeah, so I do a lot of cooking. I'm blessed that my parents are cattle ranchers, so every time they come visit, I get a big cooler full of beef. So we eat plenty of beef, and chicken. I love, a good quinoa salad, and chicken is often my go-to meal before a race. So I eat a lot of whole foods that way. I do have a protein shake almost every day. Um, and you can buy powders, like whey protein powder or the boxes of the pre-made shakes from Costco. In the winter, I just leave one in my car. No matter where I am after my workout, I can have 30 grams of protein on the way home, and so that's pretty handy. So that's not necessarily a whole food, but it's a good way to get a lot of protein real easy. And so, and I have a sweet tooth, so I eat candy, but I try to not eat a ton of candy.
Yeah,
But yeah, to live life, like diets fail. If I tried to never eat candy, I would fail, and then I would just only eat candy. So I eat mostly healthy and still eat candy.
little bit, yeah, so you have a good balance. That's
I try. So
awesome.
when
Well,
it comes to fueling, did you want to know about fueling for my races
yeah,
too?
definitely. That's something that is always asked from the athletes, that they have a hard time figuring out what to take, especially the longer distance, in this case, we're doing mainly for marathons, but tell us also about an Ironman, because I know that it's much different. And yeah, people are going to have a hard time making those adjustments from a marathon to a triathlon. So yeah, tell us your fueling let's start with the marathon.
Yeah, so I believe in fueling early and often. And so, if I'm in these running Facebook groups and everyone's like, I can run a half marathon without anything. And I'm like, yeah, I could, but I'm not going to run my best half marathon without any fuel. And I'm going to feel like poop when it's over. And so, um, it took me a little bit to figure out. I started thinking I needed a gel every 40 minutes. So I'd do a gel every 40 minutes. And someone told me they did one every 35 or every 30. And I'm like, it's interesting. I wonder if I should take one earlier. And I could feel myself, I would run out of energy before my next gel would come, like time would come. And so then I started doing a gel every 35 minutes. And on an easier run, that was okay. On a, like if I'm doing that marathon pace, 8-minute miles, I'm working hard to get an 8-minute mile. I don't know if that's hard for everybody. For me, that's hard. And so I could feel it, like I finally would, like mile or minute 33, 34, I was realizing like I can start feeling a little bit like my energy starting to drop. Especially partway through, like not the first hour or two, but once you're a couple hours in, I could feel it start dropping. And so I actually, for a race, I will take a gel every 30 minutes.
Okay.
I definitely don't need it. The first 30-minute rolls around. I'm like, I don't feel like I need one at all, but I do it. And so if there's any,
Before the race, how about before the race?
okay,
Before
so
you,
yeah, so I start in the morning. My favorite is overnight oats with a little bit of protein powder and chia seeds. And on a race day, I try to do that like an hour and a half before.
okay.
So get anything that has any fiber or bulk to it. I try to get it in as early as possible. And then maybe a banana a half hour before. For Ironman races, I drink Infinite on the bike. So for actually the full marathon where I qualified for Boston, I drank Infinite that morning too, to get more calories in without any bulk, right? So you just mix it kind of strong. I didn't drink water because I didn't want a full bladder. I just drank like a half a bottle of Infinite that had like 200 or 300 calories in it.
Okay.
And then I took a gel also before I ran. And I try to mimic my training runs as much to race day as possible, but I'm not always getting up 2 hours early before a training run to eat and space all that stuff out. I do a few times to try to feel it, or if I was having gut issues, trying to get that stuff dialed in. But on race day, I'm a little bit more aggressive with my fueling.
Okay.
Pre-race.
Are you loyal to a brand of gels or do you experiment here and there?
I experiment. I have some favorites. I often look at the race and see what they're using. So for the tunnel marathon, they were using honey stingers. So my girlfriends and I bought a case of honey stingers and shared them to the honey stinger gel. And the first time I did it, I had horrible gut issues, like barely finished the run. Like had to run into the grocery store and use the restroom before I could drive home. And it made my stomach very upset. After that, I was a little more careful. I would take them slower with a little bit of water. And I figured out I could use them. Because I wanted to know that I could use the nutrition on the course. I was going to take mostly my own gels, but if you drop it or you forget it or you're feeling like low on energy and you need an extra gel, I wanted to know I could use the on-course nutrition. For Ironman races, they use the Martin gels. They sit fine on my stomach, but they're gross and they're very expensive.
Yeah.
In my opinion, gross and expensive. So my favorite gels I like are the Science and Sport SIS gels.
Yeah.
Those sit really good on my stomach. They're not sweet and sticky. And then I like the Human gels. They're like a
What,
mango and a raspberry. It's like fruit. It's like kind of like eating raspberry jam. I'm like, who doesn't want to eat raspberry jam? I enjoy them a lot.
you probably get excited when you know they are offering what you at the race, they're offering the gels that you take. That you
Yeah,
like, that you prefer the taste of. Like
yeah, that's always nice. And I pick them up, but the gels are expensive. And if you train as much as I do, if you're going through, 3 or 4 gels a weekend, they're $2 or $3 a piece, that adds up. So no matter what race I do, I pick up a gel at the aid stations and I might use it later on a training run when I don't care how I feel. Because in my races, I always do a Science and Sport gel first, like for the first couple, because I know they're not going to mess up my stomach. And the Human gels, they have some that have caffeine in them. So there's like this strawberry lemonade one that has caffeine. So I'll take that, like I'll stagger them out, take a couple SIS gels and take a Human gel with caffeine, and throw a couple of those in there later on in the race.
what percentage do you know that do you usually go for a percentage? Because I know that some have a little more percentage than others on caffeine.
Yeah, I don't pay too much attention.
Just as long as I like caffeine.
Yeah, I didn't realize that this one, it does say it had double. So some have like 35, and this one says the strawberry lemonade one I like says double. Someone says 70. Could that be right? I don't know. But yeah, I
70.
shoot for that 31 every 30 minutes. For the what's different for my half Ironman distance races, is like I said, I use Infinite on the bike. And it's a powder that you mix, as strong as you want. It normally says like 2 scoops is 280 calories. So that's often what people put in a bike bottle. I'm a little extreme, I guess, but I put all my calories in one bike water bottle. So I put 6 scoops of Infinite, which fills up my bottle like half, and get it all mixed up in there as good as I can. So I have like 800, 900 calories in one bike bottle.
Okay.
And then I have water on my aero bars because I can just take a big swig every 15 minutes and get, it's probably 100 calories a mouthful, this stuff. And they have to chase it with a little bit of water because it's kind of sticky and very sweet. But that's an easy way to get a lot of calories without any bulk in your stomach. Because on that like for a half Ironman, I might be on the bike like a lot of people will be out there 3 hours and then you go run your half marathon after. You don't want to have bathroom problems. So I like that Infinite. And then I'll take a gel towards the end of the bike, and I eat some gummies on the bike too, just because I like them. I
Okay.
don't know. Yeah. And the gummies, I normally use Cliff gummies that have electrolytes or caffeine, maybe both. And so I just dump them out of their little sleeves into my little bento box on the top tube bag of my bike. And so I can nibble on the Cliff gummies in between drinking Infinite. And then,
And in
like I
the
said,
water, do you put electrolytes in the water or no?
Infinite has electrolytes in it.
Okay. So that's
And
what
then
you,
the gummies do too. So
nice.
Cliff blocks is what I've had lately. But
What's your worst race?
my worst race experience. Oh, I'd say that full Ironman was rough when it was 105 degrees. To get off the bike, have it be 100 degrees and go run a marathon was pretty overwhelming feeling. And I had gut issues on that race, but I think everyone did because your body's just shutting down, and so it's telling your digestive system to just exit everything out because we're trying to keep the heart alive because this idiot's running a marathon when it's 105 outside. So that one was pretty hard. It was like the best, probably most rewarding to finish that day.
Yeah,
Um, but it was hard.
I bet. Yeah, the body has to work so hard just to keep you cool.
Mhm.
Let
Yeah.
'em finish. Yeah. Well,
Yeah.
awesome job. Well, you've given us a ton of great tips for everybody, both on the mental strategies, your training regime, and you said you use an alarm to get up in the morning, but does it, because I noticed that when I was training really hard, that there's something that happens automatic after you got disciplined. It's sort of like I could feel my heart just start pumping harder when it was time to get up.
Yeah, I wake up before my alarm all the time. Like even if it's 4:45 in the morning, like 4:40, I'm like tossing and turning. I'm like, fine, I'll get up. It's not that I'm awake then or even want to get up, but I'm done sleeping, I guess, because my body knows. So
Uh,
yeah, you get used to it. One thing I will add, this was in some of the preliminary questions you talked about balancing family. Do you
yeah,
mind if I share a little bit about that?
absolutely. I want you to.
Okay. Because I think that's a big deal for women. In running, you'll see most races are about 50-50. In triathlon, like for that half Ironman distance, it's about 30% women. So it's definitely a male dominated sport. And I think there's a lot of reasons for that. There's a time commitment, and with kids and family, and even with my girlfriends, I talk about like I'll suggest to them, like, you've always talked about wanting to run a marathon. Let's train for one. They're like, oh, I have too many things, and there's kids practices and all these different things to balance. And I work full time. I have 2 kids. They're a little bit not older now, but they're not babies anymore. So it is easier. They're in middle school. Um, so I can leave them home, if I go swimming in the morning or different things, they can stay home on their own now. But I just want to encourage women that it's okay to have a hobby. It's okay to have a goal. It's okay to do stuff for yourself, especially if it's things that are healthy. Um, and my kids have seen me since my very first triathlon where I was terrified and I felt like I didn't belong. I'm on my, old used road bike and hand me down this and that. And I felt so out of place and I was just terrified. They've seen me go from that to competing at the world championships. And they couldn't be more proud of me. They've been just a part of this journey along the whole way. And I wouldn't change a thing. There's a lot of stuff we did to make it work. I would take them with me on their bikes while I went for a long run, or they'll come out and kayak and fish while I'm swimming in the lake. They're like my safety crew, which was a little harder when they were like 6 and 8 years old. Now it's a little bit easier to keep an eye on them, but they're with me as much as I can when we're doing these things. And my son last year was 11 and did his first triathlon and is so excited to do another one this year. And he's a runner. He is the same fight as me. Like he did a 5K this year, PR'd his 5K. And he's like, Mom, you need to sign me up for a 10K now. Like that wasn't too hard. I need to, like what's the next biggest, hardest thing? And so I love that I've been able to demonstrate that for them. Like I've conquered all these things that scared the bejesus out of me. And I went and did it. And, turns out I can do all these hard things.
That's
So,
awesome. Yeah, that you're being a great example to your kids. Is there any triathletes? Well, you're one of them is already into running, and I'm sure you had a lot to do with that inspiration for that.
yeah,
Um,
we have no one else in our family. I grew up in a very small town in northern Nevada, like a cattle ranching town. So, I was never even exposed to triathlon until, like I said, I moved up here. We moved to Spokane in 2014. And then, like I said, I bought a bike and thought, if I can run and bike, I can probably do a triathlon. I did not know how hard swimming would be at the time. But so this is all new for us, to kind of this whole world of triathlon or even competitive running. So,
yeah, and it does take time, and I appreciate you sharing that, how you balance that and your state of mind and how healthy and positive you are around being a positive role model and telling the audience that not to have these guilt trips around taking time for yourself, taking good self-care, because that kind of spills to everything else. If you can take good care of yourself, you can take good care of others, and I think we need more of that.
you do. And it does take a whole family. Like before I decided to do the Ironman, there was a conversation with my husband. Like, this is the amount of hours it's going to take. It's going to mean I miss some dinners and, some Saturdays you're going to be on your own and because of the hours and the training. And so it's definitely a family commitment. There's a lot of conversations that were had, but he can cook too. He's been supportive and maybe it's lucky that I have boys because they have like, I don't watch Star Wars or The Mandalorian. So it's like if I'm going to take off on a big bike ride, they're all excited. They're like, yes, Mandalorian night or whatever it is. They have different movies they watch together. So when mom's gone, it's like cool guy time and they can play video games or watch movies. And um, it's fine. Like, even if your kids are young, dad can take care of the kids while mom goes and does something for herself. It's 100% healthy.
Yeah.
Um,
So that's probably a good tip that you say having those conversations when you're going to start, especially I would imagine an Ironman.
gosh,
Here's what's gonna, here's what's expected of the training. Here's what expected of the house, and probably have those conversations because
yeah. And even for marathons, like my weekend run is going to be a big deal. Like that conversation with your spouse for the next 20 weeks, somewhere on the weekend, I have to get in my long run and like I might need your help. Like, are we all on board to make this happen? I think that's a really important conversation to have.
yeah, because there's also not too much energy afterwards to
Yeah,
get
yep. So I do try to do most of my workouts early in the morning, so I can come home and I see the kids before they leave for school. But I do want to go to bed earlier sometimes than everyone else in my house because I got up a lot earlier, ran 12 miles before they were out of bed. But
So what's your take on sleep? Does it help you a lot to get a good amount of sleep, or what's your sleep cycle like?
Sleeping is the thing that I'm worst at. So you should probably ask someone else. um, I do better if I get more sleep for sure. Um, I'm not a good sleeper, and then I tend to, stay up to see like my husband after the kids go to bed, but I still have that 4:40 alarm. And so I love it if I average, like my Garmin will tell you your 7-day average. If it gets above 7 hours average, it's really good. A lot of times it's closer to 6, which is not good. Um, I would like to be better at sleeping and recovery.
Meditation, or do you feel like the running is part of your meditation?
Yeah, I love being outside. Um, so it's just refreshing and fulfilling for me. Like I feel so good once I can go and be active outside. But I do have a busy brain that makes it hard to fall asleep sometimes.
All right. Well, thank you, Lacey. This has been amazing. Is there a question that I missed that I didn't ask that you want me to ask?
I don't think so.
We covered a lot.
Yeah, I talked a lot. I hope it was okay.
What is one piece of advice you would give to inspiring marathoners or triathletes who want to improve their performance or just want to do great? Maybe they want to qualify for Boston or they're going for the World Championships.
Yeah, I think strength training is huge.
Okay, strength training.
Yeah. Um, I am like the bike is my strength. I know we're talking about marathons in Boston, but I'm still like where I would rank on a bike race, like or the bike leg of a triathlon is stronger than where I would rank in the running leg. And I do think that's because of my strength training. And I think that's part of why I was able to progress as fast as I was with my training is that I kind of came from a strength training background and I really like lifting weights. And especially in the off season, like I don't do any of this, like hold the dumbbells. It's like squat rack, heavy, heavy. Um, until I get closer to a race, then I scale back down because that fatigue from like squatting heavy and heavy deadlifts, that kind of stuff it sticks with you like all week. It's harder to go and do like a good speed work after a heavy lifting session there's a different sort of fatigue in your muscles. At least that's what I've experienced. So I do scale back my strength training closer to a race, but I think a lot of people think since we're endurance athletes, we need to do lightweight high reps. And I mentioned the book Roar by Stacy Sims, and she, especially for women, like lift heavy. Like you should be like barely able to finish 8 to 10 reps. That's how heavy we should lift, especially as women. As we get older, it's harder for us to build and maintain muscle.
Yeah.
So I lift like heavy.
Do you
I
do the
think,
same for arm lifts and all that,
yeah.
what do you?
I do total body. I do think the legs. When I talk about legs, I think of my cycling is from my legs that I do, but it has to help with my swimming and stuff too.
Yeah.
It's probably a little, maybe that's part of my workout that is driven by vanity. Like I said, most of what I do is driven by racing. But I think, core strength carries over to all the disciplines too. Um,
Definitely.
I do a lot of core work and then a lot of heavy lifting, upper and lower body.
Okay. Well, there you have it. Some great tips. And also, lastly, is the title of these workshops is Training with Purpose. And when I say training with purpose, I mean knowing your why you're doing it. How important is that to you? And what does it mean? What is your purpose? And what does it mean to train with purpose?
Yeah, that's the hardest question you've asked yet. Um, each of my races is always has a different purpose. I think that's part of it. Overall, it's been really fun to see what I'm capable of. So I maybe don't have a really succinct answer of, I'm doing this for one reason. But it's been just so exciting to push my limits and see what I can do. Because it's all still kind of new for me. And so that's been really exciting.
Yeah, because I can see it clearly when you talk about it, your why, especially when you talk about your kids and having that pride of being a good example and your importance of being healthy and being strong. And then in each little race, I'm not meaning little race, but in each race, that curiosity, how much can you push is a good why. I wonder, what can I do? Can I qualify for the Boston Marathon? Can I do this? What else can I do? I think that's a very powerful why.
Absolutely. And even how I mentioned at the beginning, where everything was scary, it was also scary. My first bike ride with Team Blaze, like my first group ride, I was terrified. Like, what are these hand signals? And what if I can't keep up? And it was so scary. And I went and did it anyway. Isn't that like, here's like the definition of brave is being afraid and doing it anyway. And I think that feeling is almost as addictive as the racing or whatever it is, like that feeling of overcoming a fear. And really that's what drove me at first was this feels really good to go and do something that I was terrified of and I did it. Like I didn't I didn't die of humiliation. I didn't get left behind on the bike ride or whatever it is. Like I learned how to swim. Um all that stuff it felt so good to kind of conquer something that I thought would be impossible for me or was so scary. I didn't even know if I could do it. And I just like kept putting one foot in front of another and went and conquered something that was really scary.
That's awesome. You're doing hard training and you're having fun at the same time, and that's, I think, a
Yeah, I love it.
good way
Yeah.
to train. That's awesome. What is your next race?
I'm fighting an injury right now. So I am signed up for Victoria 70.3. I have an MRI next week because I don't think I'm going to be able to run it, but I can turn it into a relay.
Oh,
So
there you
I can bike and swim and I have some people who are willing to run it with me.
go. Awesome.
So
Great.
that's not at the end of this month. And after that, we'll know more once I know what my recovery looks like from this. But
All right, Lacey. Well, thank you. Thank you. You're an amazing inspiration to all of us. And I look forward to our next interview and seeing you progress. You've already progressed a great deal, and you're an inspiration. You have fun in your training. And I think that people who listen to this recording are going to definitely get a lot out of it because you provided a lot.
hey,
Thank
thank
you
you.
so much. And until next time, please stay triumphant.
Thank you. Have a good day.
You too.